Trolls in Dungeons & Dragons descend from a tradition far older than the game itself. In Scandinavian and Norse folklore, the troll was a broad category of supernatural beings rather than a single creature type. The Old Norse troll covered everything from giant cave-dwelling brutes to shape-shifting hags and mischievous forest spirits. What unified them wasn't appearance but disposition. Trolls were the thing that lived outside the boundaries of human settlement, hostile to civilization and generally up to no good. Some regional traditions held that sunlight turned trolls to stone or caused them to burst, though this was never a universal trait across Scandinavian lore. When Dungeons & Dragons codified the troll for tabletop play, the sunlight petrification motif present in some folkloric traditions was set aside from the outset. The defining trait became regeneration instead, an ability so significant that troll-like regeneration became its own descriptor across fantasy media for decades afterward. Gary Gygax drew directly on Poul Anderson's 1961 novel 3 Hearts and 3 Lions when designing the D&D troll. Anderson's trolls regenerate, and fire and acid are the counters that destroy them permanently. That template passed into D&D unchanged. Rather than a creature you avoided until dawn, the D&D troll became one you had to actively destroy, a distinction that shaped how an entire generation of players approached monster encounters. Physical description and the iconic silhouette. The standard troll presented in core D&D material stands around 9 feet tall, with a hunched, loping posture that makes its actual height deceptive until it rises to its full menace. Its frame is gangly and disproportionate, long rubbery arms that nearly drag against the ground, a sunken chest, and a potbelly that looks almost comedic until attached to claws capable of raking through chainmail. Skin tone varies by subspecies and edition, but commonly runs in shades of green, gray-green, or sickly yellow-brown, often described as warty, mottled, or covered in patches of coarse hair. The face is built for threat. A low, sloping forehead gives way to a wide mouth filled with jagged teeth, and the nose is a long, flat, prominent feature that serves as the creature's primary hunting organ. In editions where trolls possess the scent ability, they can pinpoint nearby opponents by smell, and follow a trail even when they cannot see it. The eyes are small, sunken, and usually depicted as dull yellow or red, conveying low cunning rather than malevolent intelligence of, say, a dragon. Regeneration, the defining trait. Troll regeneration works differently from most healing in the game. In most editions, a troll regrows damage at the start of each of its turns, meaning a wound that would drop a normal creature stays largely irrelevant to a troll's combat effectiveness from round to round. Sever a limb and the troll can reattach it by holding the severed piece against the stump. Some fictional depictions of trolls in D&D adjacent media push this further, with detached limbs continuing to claw and twitch on their own, though this detail is more common in novels and adventure fiction than in core rules text. The only thing that interrupts this process are fire and acid damage. A troll struck by these damage types does not regenerate the harm done by that specific attack, which is why the folk wisdom among adventurers, often passed down in taverns and bestiaries alike, became burn it and keep burning it. In older editions such as AD&D and 3.5, a troll reduced to 0 hit points by ordinary means wasn't truly dead and would resume regenerating unless finished off with fire or acid. 5e simplified this by treating death normally, but the finishing blow tradition persists in how most tables run the encounter regardless of edition. A creature that can survive being chopped into pieces, burned partway, and left for dead develops a particular relationship with mortality. Trolls in written fiction set in D&D worlds are frequently portrayed as indifferent to their own injuries, shrugging off wounds that would finish anything else and treating combat losses as delays rather than dangers. Diet, behavior, and the hunger that never ends. Trolls are driven by hunger above all else. Their regeneration burns enormous metabolic resources, and the result is a creature that is perpetually, desperately famished. This hunger explains troll psychology, territoriality, and their relationship with nearly every other species in their environment. Trolls hunt primarily by smell. Their long, protrusive noses are not incidental to their appearance. They're functional organs that can pinpoint prey by scent. detect the lingering smell of a campfire hours after it's been extinguished, and identify individual creatures by smell alone. A party that drives off a troll and believes the encounter finished may find themselves stalked for days by a creature with dark vision that can smell exactly where they went. A troll's diet is functionally anything organic: livestock, wild game, fish pulled from rivers with bare claws, carrion left by other predators. And of course, travelers unlucky enough to wander into a troll's territory all serve as food. Some sourcebooks lean into the cannibalistic angle, noting that trolls will eat other trolls, including their own offspring if the food grows scarce enough, and that troll mothers sometimes drive off or kill weaker young to reduce competition for resources. This is simply how trolls are, a species-wide indifference to suffering, including their own kind's suffering, that places them firmly outside any framework of civilized morality. Trolls are smarter than they look. Most editions give them low but functional intelligence, enough to use simple tools, set ambushes, recognize patterns in prey behavior, such as routes travelers take along a known road, and occasionally work in loose cooperative groups when the prey is large enough to require it. A troll driven off a hunting ground will often remember the location and the smell of those responsible, and may stalk a region for a considerable time waiting for an opportunity at revenge or an easier meal. Troll subtypes across the multiverse. Standard forest cave trolls. The baseline troll, often simply called a troll without further qualifier, is the green or gray-skinned regenerating brute found in forests, hills, caves, and ruins across nearly every D&D setting. This is the version most closely tied to the core regeneration and weakness to fire and acid traits, and it serves as the template against which every other troll variant is measured. Ice trolls. Ice trolls inhabit Arctic and subarctic regions, particularly in settings like Icewind Dale. Their hides take on white, pale blue, or frost-touch coloration that helps them blend into snowy terrain. Ice trolls retain the core regeneration trait, making them especially dangerous in frozen wastelands where fire, the one reliable counter, may be scarce or difficult to sustain. A party fighting an ice troll in a blizzard faces not only the creature itself, but the environment's active hostility towards the only thing that actually kills trolls. Fire-adapted trolls. Various splat books and setting-specific bestiaries have introduced trolls with elemental affinities tied to fire. These variants invert the usual weaknesses, possessing resistance or immunity to fire damage while remaining vulnerable to cold or acid damage. Some have appeared as more overtly evil, almost demonic-touched versions of the base creature, associated with infernal or abyssal corruption that has twisted an ordinary troll into something with cunning beyond the species' usual baseline. Two-headed trolls. Two-headed trolls appear as a published variant in Volo's Guide to Monsters, presented as creatures of warped biology rather than deliberate magical creation. The result is two heads on one body, each with its own hunger, its own attention, and its own temper. Each head functions independently, granting the creature advantage on perception checks, and the ability to watch multiple directions simultaneously, making it significantly harder to catch unaware. Two-headed trolls are frequently portrayed as having two distinct, bickering personalities housed in one frame, an arrangement that produces both dark comedy and genuine horror, since the two minds rarely agree on anything except the need to eat. Rot trolls. Rot trolls appeared in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and represent one of the more disturbing departures from the base template. Where an ordinary troll is a creature of explosive, violent hunger, a rot troll is something more pestilential. Its body is in a constant state of accelerated decay that its regeneration cannot quite keep pace with, meaning pieces of it are perpetually sloughing off even as new tissue grows to replace them. The stench alone is potent enough to sicken those nearby, imposing a poison condition on creatures that fail to resist it. A rot troll's attacks carry disease, and creatures that survive an encounter may find themselves fighting the infection long after the troll itself is ash. Rot trolls tend to appear in swamps, sewers, and plague-touched ruins, environments where the line between living creature and walking rot is already thin. Rock trolls and stone-touch trolls. Certain settings and supplements have featured rock trolls or stone trolls. variants whose hides have taken on a granite or boulder-like texture, granting increased physical resilience at the cost of some mobility. These trolls are typically found in mountainous or heavily rocky terrain, and their stone-textured hide sometimes ties back, thematically if not always mechanically, to the old folkloric idea of trolls being creatures of stone and earth, even if the actual petrification by sunlight trait was dropped from mainline D&D trolls long ago. Sea trolls and scrags. Scrags, also referred to as sea trolls or aquatic trolls, are one of the more significant divergences from the base troll template. Adapted for life in oceans, lakes, and other large bodies of water, scrags possess the same hunger-driven aggression as their land-dwelling cousins, but their bodies have shifted to support an amphibious existence. Web digits, a leaner build suited to swimming, and the ability to breathe both air and water. The crucial difference from standard trolls is that scrag regeneration only functions when the creature is in contact with water. Drag one onto dry land and it heals no better than any other monster. This makes scrags simultaneously easier and harder to deal with than their land-dwelling kin. Easier because denying them their regeneration is as simple as keeping them out of water. Harder because scrags rarely oblige their enemies by cooperating with that plan. A scrag dragged onto a ship's deck and set alight is a manageable problem. A scrag that pulls a sailor beneath the surface and regenerates freely through whatever damage it takes is another matter. Coastal villages and settings like the Forgotten Realms carry folklore traditions warning against swimming in certain coves or fishing particular waters because of scrag activity. And some pirate crews pay tribute in food, valuables, or occasionally crew members to scrag tribes in exchange for safe passage. Dire trolls and other escalated forms. Dire trolls are considerably larger and more dangerous than the standard troll, typically functioning as regional threats rather than the wandering nuisance that ordinary trolls represent. A dire troll retains all of the core troll traits: regeneration, relentless hunger, and vulnerability to fire and acid, scaled alongside dramatically increased size, strength, and durability. Some interpretations give dire trolls additional limbs, multiple heads, or enough mutations that make them resemble something closer to a small-scale natural disaster than a single monster. These escalated forms often serve in campaigns as the culmination of a troll infestation plot thread, a region beset by ordinary troll raids that turn out to be the overflow population from a single, ancient dire troll that has been growing and feeding in some hidden lair for centuries, accumulating size and malice with every meal. Troll society, tribes, and lairs. Trolls build nothing and keep nothing, but loose bands form around strength. Most lore describes them as living in small family groups or crude tribal arrangements, usually centered around a particularly large or dominant individual. Sometimes a dire troll, sometimes simply an unusually old and successful specimen that other trolls defer to out of fear and practical self-interest. Troll lairs tend to be found in places that offer both concealment and proximity to a reliable food source. Caves near well-traveled roads, ruins adjacent to rivers or lakes, swamps bordering farmland, or coastal caves near fishing villages for scrag populations. The interior of a troll lair is nothing like a home in the way of a goblin warren or orc stronghold might be. It's a midden of bones, rotting food, and the accumulated detritus of countless meals, reflecting the troll's complete indifference to anything beyond immediate appetite and safety. Troll mothers are fiercely protective of very young trolls up until the point where those young become competition for food, at which point the relationship turns adversarial or outright lethal. Adult trolls within a band will sometimes cooperate to bring down larger prey, such as a group of armed travelers or livestock guarded by herders, splitting the kill afterward in a rough pecking order determined by size and aggression rather than anything resembling fairness. Trolls and giants, an uneasy kinship. Across multiple settings, trolls occupy a strange taxonomic and cultural space adjacent to true giants, without quite belonging to giant society. Some lore treats trolls as degenerate or corrupted offshoot of giant kind, distant cousins to the ordered, caste-based society of true giants, such as fire giants, frost giants, hill giants, and so on, who lack the discipline, religious structure, and craft traditions that define giant culture and settings where giants follow ordning-style hierarchies. This relationship is rarely friendly. Hill giants and other lower caste giants sometimes tolerate trolls as a kind of disposable muscle, or use troll tribes as a buffer against other threats. But true giants generally regard trolls with the same mixture of disgust and wariness that a noble house might regard a feral, distantly related branch of the family that everyone agrees not to discuss at dinner. Some sources and campaign settings suggest fire giants have put trolls to work as expendable laborers in dangerous forge environments, reasoning that a creature which regenerates most injuries is more useful than one that doesn't. The logic holds, though the arrangement carries real risk to the troll. Fire is the one damage type that defeats its regeneration, and most trolls tolerate such arrangements only as long as they are fed adequately. Trollkin and troll-blooded lineages. Half-trolls and troll-blooded humanoids appear at the fringes of multiple game systems, though the treatment varies considerably by setting. Pathfinder codified trollkin as a distinct ancestry, humanoids carrying troll blood who typically inherit exaggerated size, toughness, and appetite without the full regeneration that defines pureblood trolls. In D&D proper, half-trolls are rare and tend to be treated as individual curiosities or the result of specific magical interference, rather than a recognized lineage. Where they do appear, the consistent thread is that the regenerative trait dilutes sharply with hybridization. A creature that is half-troll might heal faster than a human but will not survive beheading the way its parent would. The appetite, however, tends to carry through almost undiluted. Notable individual trolls and named figures. Most trolls exist in published D&D material as unnamed threats, identified only by their tribe or lair location. The Forgotten Realms sourcebooks note specific regions where particularly old and large trolls have established themselves as de facto rulers of their territory for generations, surviving every attempt at removal through sheer regenerative stubbornness and accumulated cunning. The pattern these figures follows is consistent. A region suffers escalating attacks, investigation traces them to a single ancient troll rather than a tribe, and the confrontation involves a creature whose age and accumulated injuries have made it something locals speak of in tones usually reserved for dragons or liches. Vaprak, the god trolls fear and worship. Trolls across most D&D settings acknowledge a single deity. Vaprak, a chaotic evil god of destruction and greed who claims dominion over both trolls and ogres. He appears as an enormous troll-like figure, green-skinned, hunched, and perpetually furious. Vaprak demands no temples, no organized clergy, and no doctrine beyond violence and consumption. Trolls propagate him the way they do most things, by eating well, killing often, and surviving. Vaprak's relationship with his own followers is contemptuous. He views trolls as useful instruments of destruction rather than chosen people, and the feeling is largely mutual. Trolls who pray to Vaprak do so out of a dim species-level understanding that he is the power behind their regeneration and could theoretically withdraw it. Devotion measured in fear rather than faith. Shamans among troll tribes draw their power from Vaprak and often serve as the closest thing a troll band has to a political authority, since they can threaten divine punishment as a supplement to the ordinary threat of physical violence. Vaprak harbors a documented rivalry with Demogorgon, a demon prince whose territorial ambitions frequently overlap with Vaprak's claimed domain. This feud occasionally manifests at ground level as conflict between troll bands aligned with one power or the other, though in practice these conflicts are largely indistinguishable from ordinary troll territorial disputes. Trolls in different settings. The Forgotten Realms. In the Forgotten Realms, trolls appear across the breadth of the setting, from the forest of the Dalelands to the icy reaches of Icewind Dale, to the swamps near the Vast. One of the most notorious troll-dominated regions is Trollbark Forest in the Vast, a stretch of woodland east of the Dragon Reach so thoroughly claimed by troll tribes that travel through it is considered suicidal without substantial armed escort. Trollbark has appeared in Realm sourcebooks as a place that even hardened mercenaries give wide berth, a standing reminder that trolls in sufficient numbers can effectively deny an entire region to humanoid settlement. The setting's broad geography also allows for the full range of troll subtypes and lore-appropriate locations. Ice trolls in the far north, scrags along coastal regions and in the waters near the Sea of Moving Ice, and standard forest trolls scattered throughout the temperate woodlands. Several modules across the realms publishing history have used troll infestations as inciting incidents, low-level threats that escalate once the party realizes the trolls are being driven from their usual territory by something worse, or that their numbers are swelled by a dire troll patriarch or matriarch drawing them in. Eberron and other settings. Settings outside the realms have adapted trolls to fit local thematic concerns. In settings with strong themes of magical industrialization or war-torn history, trolls sometimes appear as remnants of older, wilder eras, creatures that predate the current age's civilizations and persist in the margins, in the deep forests or mountain ranges that even magical infrastructure hasn't fully tamed. The core traits, regeneration, hunger, vulnerability to fire and acid, remain consistent across settings, but the framing narrative around why trolls exist and what they represent shifts to match each setting's tone. The troll's reputation among adventurers. Trolls carry a specific weight of practical folklore among adventuring parties that few other monsters match. Mercenary companies, caravan guards, and rural militias pass down the same hard-earned wisdom. A troll that goes down to steal or spell is not necessarily a dead troll, and only flame or acid closes the matter for good. Veteran adventurers carry flasks of oil, alchemist fire, or torches specifically because of trolls, and a party caught fighting one without a fire source on hand is in genuine trouble regardless of how many times they've already killed the thing in front of them. This reputation has made trolls something of a measuring stick for inexperienced parties. A region's first troll encounter is often remembered long after. The moment a dead troll's claws twitch back to motion, sinew knitting itself closed in front of horrified onlookers. Word of such encounters spreads through taverns and guild halls, and the lesson, once learned, does not leave easily. At the same time, trolls remain a fixture of the wild places between settlements precisely because they require so little explanation. A troll's motivation is hunger. It will keep eating until something stops it permanently, which is rarely an easy thing to arrange.